Welcome to my channel, Most Worth Coins WC, where history lives in your hands. If you're passionate about rare coins, vintage currency, and the fascinating stories behind them, you're in the right place. Don't forget to watch the full video, share it with your fellow collectors, like, and subscribe to stay updated with more valuable content every week. So let's get started. The 25-cent coin of 1965 from the Eastern Caribbean territories under Queen Elizabeth II belongs to a fascinating transitional period of colonial numismatics in the Caribbean region. To understand it properly, one must look not just at the coin itself, but at the political, economic, and cultural context in which it circulated. The coin is linked to the collective currency arrangement known as the British Caribbean Territories Eastern Group, BCTG. This group was formed to unify the coinage of several small island colonies under Britain's governance in the mid-20th century. The participating colonies included the Leeward and Windward Islands, such as Antigua, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Montserrat, and also Barbados until it later established its own currency. Before this regional arrangement, many of these islands relied on a mixture of British sterling coinage, Spanish silver, and eventually other colonial issues, which created confusion in everyday commerce. By 1955, a decision was made to create a centralized authority, the British Caribbean Currency Board, BCCB, to produce uniform banknotes and coins for use across the territories, and by 1955 to 1965 these coins, including the 25 cents, became a common medium of exchange. The 1965 issue is particularly significant because it represents one of the early years of the decimal-style denominations under this system. Unlike the traditional British shillings and pence coinage, which Britain itself did not decimalize until 1971, the Caribbean territories under the Eastern Group began striking coins that were denominated in cents and based on the U.S. decimal model due to the heavy trade links and geographic proximity with the Americas. Thus, a 25-cent coin aligned closely with the American quarter dollar, making it more convenient for trade and currency comparison across the region. This was a practical innovation because tourists from North America, traders, and shipping merchants all circulated within the Caribbean, and a cent-based system facilitated smoother transactions. In terms of physical description, the 25 cents 1965 coin is typically struck in copper nickel, a durable alloy widely used in circulating coins of the mid-20th century. Its approximate weight was about 5.83 grams, with a diameter of around 23.6 millimeters, making it very similar in size to the U.S. quarter, again reflecting the harmonization with American standards. The coin had a reeded edge, milled edge, which not only gave it a tactile distinction but also served as an anti-counterfeiting measure by making clipping or shaving less practical. The material gave the coin a silvery appearance, resilient against corrosion in the humid Caribbean climate, which was essential for everyday utility. On the obverse, the coin prominently bears the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II as the reigning monarch of Britain and symbolic head of the Commonwealth territories. The effigy used in 1965 was the second portrait by artist Arnold Machin, though in many Caribbean coins of this period, the earlier Mary Gillick portrait was also adapted. The Gillick design depicts a young queen wearing a laureate wreath, signifying victory, peace, and classical dignity, rather than a crown. Around the portrait runs a Latinized legend, Queen Elizabeth II. The phrasing is consistent across Commonwealth coinages, asserting her royal authority but in a simplified manner compared with the longer Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina legends used on British coins. This uniformity helped ensure easy recognition in multiple islands where literacy levels and local dialects varied. The image of the Queen was enough for instant identification. The reverse design of the 1965 25 cents coin carries the denomination boldly, encircled by a wreath of tropical foliage, usually laurel or similar symbolic plants. The inscription typically reads, British Caribbean Territories, Eastern Group along the perimeter. At the bottom or center, one finds the date 1965 and the denomination 25 cents. The wreath imagery tied the coin visually to themes of prosperity, agriculture, and natural abundance, which was central to the Caribbean economy. Sugar, bananas, cocoa, spices, and rum were the lifeblood export to the islands. By encircling the denomination with such motifs, the coin reminded users of their shared agricultural wealth and unity under the Eastern Group identity. Historically, 1965 falls at a time when these islands were transitioning from purely colonial administration toward greater self-governance. Many of the Eastern Caribbean islands were slowly moving toward independence or associated statehood in the 1960s and 1970s. Thus, the coin stands at the intersection of colonial authority, the Queen's image, and regional cooperation, the Eastern group identity. It was money that crossed borders within the Caribbean without issue, unlike earlier fragmented currencies, and it laid the foundation for the eventual creation of the Eastern Caribbean dollar, XCD, in the 1980s under the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB. In fact, the modern XCD coins of today are direct descendants of the 1965 designs. From a collecting standpoint, the 1965 25-cent coin is a highly sought-after piece for enthusiasts of Caribbean numismatics. Its appeal comes not from rarity in a strict sense, as many were minted for wide circulation, but from its historical significance and its role as part of a now-defunct currency union. Coins in circulated condition are common, but well-preserved examples in uncirculated or proof-like states are scarcer and command higher values in collector markets. The coin also draws attention from those interested in British Commonwealth coinage, since it represents one of the early adoptions of decimalized values within a British sphere of influence. Economically, one must imagine the coin function in everyday Caribbean life in 1965. A 25-cent piece had real purchasing power. It could buy small food items, pay for transport fares, or cover a portion of daily wages. Because of its quarter-unit denomination, it became a very practical and heavily used coin in circulation. This meant that most surviving examples bear the natural signs of wear from pockets, purses, and constant exchange at local markets, docks, and shops. For historians, the coin thus tells a social story of Caribbean families buying produce, fishermen selling their catch, merchants balancing accounts, and tourists spending money across several islands seamlessly with a shared currency. Finally, the broader symbolism of the coin reflects the tension and blending of identities at the time. On one side, the coin emphasizes loyalty to the British Crown, a reminder of colonial authority. On the other, it highlights Caribbean unity and practicality in commerce. The date 1965 marked a year when the world was undergoing rapid change, decolonization in Africa, independence in the Caribbean, and Britain itself reassessing its role as a global power. The coin embodies these transformations in a small metallic object that passed through countless hands. The 2 shillings coin, commonly known as a florin, has a storied history in British coinage. In the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, the florin was minted annually from 1953 to 1967, with proof issues continuing into 1970. The florin was valued at 1/10 of a pound sterling, equivalent to 2 shillings, playing a significant role in pre-decimal British currency. Following the Coinage Act of 1946, the composition shifted from a debased silver alloy to a copper-nickel mix, specifically 75% copper and 25% nickel, making the coin more practical and durable for circulation. Design and specifications. Obverse, front. Features a Mary Gillick portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, a youthful laureate bust facing right. The legend read Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina, meaning Elizabeth II, by the grace of God Queen, with the title Britanniarum Omnium omitted after 1953. Reverse, back. Designed by Edgar Fuller and Cecil Thomas. Central motif, a Tudor rose, encircled by a wreath comprising thistles, shamrocks, and leeks, symbolizing England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales respectively. Legends include FID, Def, 2 shillings, and the date 1956. Physical specifications. Weight, approximately 11.31 grams, 0.36 ounces. Diameter, around 28.3 millimeters. Composition, copper-nickel alloy, 75% Cu, 25% Ni. Edge, reeded, a series of fine grooves around the perimeter, typical of higher denomination coins. Mintage and rarity. The mintage for 1956 was substantial, approximately 47,824,000 coins produced, indicating it was a common issue intended for widespread circulation. Catalogued as kilometer number 906 in the widely used Krauser and Michelin numbering system. Economic and social role. In mid-20th century Britain, the florin served practical daily functions, used for groceries, transport fares, and small transactions. Its pre-decimal status meant it bridged a numeric gap between the old pound-shilling-pence system and the upcoming decimal shift of 1971. Its copper-nickel composition ensured resilience against wear and corrosion, vital in a coin intended for heavy handling. The enduring floral design also reinforced a sense of unity among the nations within the United Kingdom. Numismatic appeal and value. Collectability. The 1956 florin is not rare given its high mintage, but preservation matters. Uncirculated or proof specimens are more prized by collectors. Errors or varieties, e.g., striking anomalies, can significantly raise a coin's value. Market value. Prices for circulated examples often range between $1 to $6 USD, depending on condition. Higher grade or certified examples command a premium. Cultural and symbolic significance. This florin encapsulates a moment of transition in British history. The streamlined inscription and youthful portrait signify a shift toward modern Commonwealth identity, reflected in the removal of Britanniarum Omnium after 1953. The reverse's plant symbols, rose, thistle, shamrock, leek, celebrate the unity and heritage of the UK's constituent nations. As Britain approached decimalization, the florin stood as a monetary relic of a pre-decimal era, yet carried the seeds of the nation's modernizing identity. In summary, the 1956 2 shillings, florin, coin is a blend of historical transition and practical design. It features a copper-nickel composition, replacing silver for durability. The elegant Mary Gillick portrait and Irish-rooted, internationally minded floral reverse. Strong production numbers, but collectible interest lies chiefly in condition and rarity of specific ENCS. A cultural anchor during a decade of evolving identity and monetary evolution in Britain. The 1978 Australian 20-cent coin belongs to the fascinating decimal series of Australia, which began in 1966 when the nation abandoned the old pounds, shillings, and pence system inherited from Britain. This reform replaced the older, somewhat cumbersome pre-decimal system with a modern decimal currency, bringing Australia into line with many global standards of the time. The 20-cent denomination was introduced as part of that reform, intended to take over the role of the 2-shilling piece, florin, which it closely matched in size and usage. Thus, the 20-cent coin of 1978 is not merely a piece of base metal change, but a continuation of a much older tradition within Australian and British coinage history. It carried both practical utility for daily commerce and symbolic meaning as part of Australia's evolving monetary identity in the late 20th century. The obverse of the 1978 20-cent coin depicts Queen Elizabeth II, who was Australia's monarch and head of state at the time. The effigy used on this year's issue was designed by Arnold Machin, a British sculptor and designer. His portrait of Elizabeth II, introduced in 1966 for Australia's new decimal series, shows a queen facing right, wearing the girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a distinctive royal jewel. This was the second definitive portrait of Elizabeth II to appear on Australian coins, following the earlier Mary Gillick design used on pre-decimal coinage. The Machin portrait is graceful and formal, yet also youthful, reflecting a mid-reign queen who had already established her global role within the Commonwealth. Around the portrait runs a legend, Elizabeth II Australian 1978, plainly stating the monarch's name, the issuing country, and the year of mintage. The simplicity of the inscription is typical of Commonwealth coinages of the time, direct, uncluttered, and easily legible. The reverse design of the coin is perhaps one of the most iconic in modern numismatics. It features a platypus, an extraordinary and uniquely Australian creature, shown swimming gracefully among swirling water currents. The design was created by Stuart Devlin, who served as the official goldsmith and jeweller to Queen Elizabeth II, and was commissioned to design Australia's decimal coin series. The platypus was a perfect choice for the 20-cent coin. It is instantly recognizable as an Australian animal, distinctive with its duck-like bill, beaver-like tail, and web feet, and it captures a mysterious, almost whimsical aspect of Australian wildlife. Devlin's rendering emphasizes movement, fluidity, and harmony with nature, with the swirling lines of water creating a dynamic background around the platypus. At the lower left of the reverse appears a denomination, expressed simply as 20, which is large and bold enough to be seen quickly, ensuring the coin's practical usability. From a technical perspective, the 1978 Australian 20-cent coin was struck in copper-nickel alloy, 75% copper and 25% nickel. The coin has a diameter of 28.65 millimeters, a thickness of about 2.5 millimeters, and a mass of 11.3 grams. Its edge is milled reeded, with fine vertical grooves running around the circumference, both to provide tactile distinction and to deter clipping or counterfeiting. The size and weight of the coin made it a substantial piece of pocket change, comparable to the British florin and US quarter, though heavier than the latter. The Australian 20 cent became a workhorse denomination in circulation, used daily in vending machines, transport fares, supermarkets, and casual transactions throughout the 1970s. By 1978, more than a decade after its introduction, it was firmly embedded as a core part of the decimal system, and millions were minted annually to meet demand. The Royal Australian Mint, established in Canberra in 1965, was responsible for producing these coins. It employed state-of-the-art minting technology for the era, using high-speed presses that could strike hundreds of coins per minute. Quality control was rigorous, ensuring uniformity of weight, diameter, and strike detail across the millions of pieces released. The mintage of the 1978 20 cent was in the tens of millions, reflecting both the large population of Australia, then over 14 million, and the need for a reliable supply of circulating currency in a growing, modern economy. For collectors, this means a coin is not rare in general circulation, but high-grade, uncirculated examples or proof issues from mint sets remain attractive acquisitions. Economically, in 1978, a 20-cent coin carried noticeable purchasing power. One could buy a loaf of bread, a local bus fare, or several small grocery items for a single coin. Australia in the late 1970s was experiencing the economic challenges of inflation, global oil crises, and shifting trade patterns, yet the 20-cent piece was a stable anchor in daily transactions. Its convenience as a fifth of $8 denomination, since the dollar was divided into 100 cents, made it ideal for everyday use, much like the quarter in the United States. Over time, the denomination became so embedded in everyday commerce that many Australians came to regard it as one of the most useful and indispensable coins in circulation. From a numismatic standpoint, the 1978 issue sits within the first 2 decades of Australia's decimal coinage, making it a historically interesting collectible. It is neither the first year of issue, 1966, nor a particularly rare date, but it represents the middle years of Elizabeth II's Machin portrait era, 1966 to 1984. Collectors often seek to build complete date runs of 20-cent coins, and the 1978 issue is essential to that pursuit. Coins that have survived in pristine mint state, graded MS-65 or higher, are scarcer than circulated examples, since most were used heavily in commerce. Proof strikes from collector sets, struck with specially polished dies and blanks to create mirror-like surfaces, are especially attractive and more valuable. The artistic symbolism of the 1978 20-cent coin deserves reflection as well. The platypus is a creature that baffled European naturalists when first encountered in the late 18th century, so that many believed it to be a hoax. By featuring it prominently on a national coin, Australia emphasized both its unique natural heritage and its independent identity. Whereas earlier coins of the colonial period carried mostly British heraldic symbols, the decimal series designed by Devlin placed native fauna at the heart of Australia's coinage. Thus, the 20-cent coin with the platypus became not only a piece of money but also a small ambassador of Australian culture, biology, and national pride. Another layer of interest is the portrait of Elizabeth II itself. The Machin effigy, elegant and youthful, symbolizes continuity of the monarchy during a period when Australia was asserting its cultural independence. The Queen's image tied Australia to its Commonwealth heritage, while the reverse design asserted its own national symbols. In this way, the coin embodies a balance between tradition and modernity, between colonial legacy and national identity that characterized Australia in the 1970s. Over time, the 20-cent coin became a familiar object in every Australian household. Its large size and distinctive platypus reverse made it easy to identify, and it became deeply associated with the practicalities of daily life. Children collected them in piggy banks, adults used them in public telephones and vending machines.